Let's take you to Delta State, where the government says sustained security of oil and gas facilities requires strong community engagement and inclusive development. The Secretary to the State Government, Kingsley Emu, stated this during a ministerial briefing for participants of the Strategic Management and Policy Studies, Course 8 2025 of the Nigerian Army Resource Center, Abuja, who are on a national study tour of the state. Ikenna Mechi reports.
Participants, led by Major General James Miam, retired, are in Asaba for the study tour themed Security of Oil and Gas Facilities in the Niger Delta, a panacea for national development. At the briefing, the Secretary to the State Government emphasized sustained community development, genuine corporate social responsibility by oil companies, policy reforms, strengthened legal frameworks, and institutionalized community policing as critical measures to safeguard oil pipelines across the state.
We have tried to work very closely with the host communities, and then host communities have this big responsibility. Host and impacted communities have this big responsibility to manage themselves. But you know that where you have money, there are a lot of dissenting factors, and then that's what we've been trying to manage. The peace building team headed by Ejinozo is doing that very strongly. And then the government himself, intervenes very regularly. We have had several meetings with Chevron, Shell on issues bordering on PIA.
The team lead, Major General James Miam, retired, said Delta was chosen because of its strategic position as a hub of oil and gas activities, noting that the study will further strengthen efforts to combat crude oil theft.
The product of our study will facilitate how whatever is being done currently can be enhanced, so that at the end of the day, oil production can only show up for the benefit of the Nigerian society and Nigerian economy.
Participants are expected to visit oil facilities and other strategic locations across the state as part of their tour. The 11-month course attracts senior officers from intelligence and security agencies, and on completion, participants will be awarded a master's degree in strategic management and policy studies. Ikenna Mechi, TVC News, Asaba.
Now, Ikenna Mechi joins me on the news from the state. Ikenna, your report focuses on high-level security briefing in Asaba. Why is Delta State considered so strategic in the conversation around oil and gas facility security? Ikenna, you may want to unmute your microphone so we can hear you. I'm afraid we still can't hear you. Ikenna, I'm asking, I talk about why Delta State is chosen, is so strategic in the conversation around the oil and gas facility security. All right, looks like Ikenna Mechi, I'm afraid we can't hear exactly what you're trying to say, but then all the same, Precious, we see Delta State, being chosen, for that security. We understand Delta State is an oil-producing state alongside some other state, and when it comes to oil, it's a cash cow for the Nigerian nation. Even though the current administration has been diversifying, reaping from non-oil, sector, revenue, but still, our oil is very, very key, especially with what is going on at the global level.
So I think Nigeria has invested a lot in protecting our oil facilities, whether it's with the Navy. Navy has been doing that. We've seen videos, especially from a reporter in Bayelsa State, Joseph Kunde, who sent these reports sometimes of ships coming from different parts of the continent.
That's right.
To Nigeria just for oil bunkering. And then those ships will be seized then by the Navy. And then we also know there's a private security outfit also, helping out.
That's right.
In that process. So we've invested so much in oil security. And I agree with you that now is not even the time to be losing oil. Especially what's going on in the world right now. I think was it Petron, yes, that talked about our refining capacity. But if we must have, refining capacity, we also must have the crude which to refine. And if people keep, smuggling our crude, then there is a problem.
Most definitely, because, and then another thing is, talk about our refineries, which are moribund right now. We know Dangote is actually upstream, doing what it's supposed to do. This is a time for it to make money. But then, the fact that the refineries in Kaduna, Warri, Delta State, Port Harcourt are not really functional, that's really going to affect us, especially, as we said, what is going on in the Middle East. How much would you say the government is actually doing in terms of helping this facilities to come back on, even though we know that NNPCL has said we are likely going to sell these facilities off?
So I will speak to how much they're doing to ensure that we have there is availability. Let's even start from there. That's because right. I know that they've done a lot with the Dangote refinery in terms of even just helping out with some policies, right? It might not be a direct cash involvement. I know that the government also has a percentage of Dangote refinery, but just the Naira to Naira crude deal was
Naira for crude also.
Yeah, so that was something that was remarkable, and then we're also seeing the effort by NNPC. They've tried to sell those refineries. I think there's now an effort to sell them to. I think it was a Warri refinery or something, but there was a refinery that was put out there for sale. But I spoke to the president or national president of Petro and Dr. Billy Gilitari. He also said, look, that selling them to private investors is the best option for us right now. Whether we have the ability, the finance to, because really it's not just to put money in and say they're working, if they're really not working optimally. Right. Private individuals, because it's an investment for them, they'll put everything in it to ensure that it actually works. And so that's where we should, maybe private investment.
And then when you're talking about corruption, in the oil sector as well, we see that this administration is doing so much in terms of fighting against, not just insecurity, but those corrupt elements, that are working within, helping other countries to come and steal from our crude oil, and even within selling the crude oil and allowing vandalism to go on. Do you feel that if we tackle corruption to the bare minimum, it's really going to help us secure these oil facilities as well as also help in our revenue generation in that sector?
So one of the things I will give to this administration is the attention they have paid to the oil sector in terms of transparency. We've seen a lot of reshuffling within that sector, especially for our own regulator. Whether it's the NNPC itself or the upstream and downstream regulator, they've done a lot of reshuffling to ensure that there's transparency. Hopefully, that leads to a more profitable NNPC, like we have, Gazprom and others around the world, Rosneft, and others.
Absolutely, and we should protect our national assets as Nigerians, not to go there to vandalize it, you believe?
Absolutely, and because right now, Saudi Aramco, I think, was vandalized during this war. Everybody's eyes is on that as well.
Absolutely.
But we do have to leave it there. Ibrahim, thank you so much for that update on news from the state. News from the state will be back tomorrow. This is News at 1 as well. Thanks for watching. For more updates on the stories we're monitoring, you can visit our website. It's www.tv